Hello, my name is Jake. I'm 31. I run a small handyman business here in Cedar Falls, mostly fixing things that other people don't have time to deal with. Leaky faucets, squeaky hinges, wobbly deck railings. The kind of work that keeps neighborhoods from falling apart one small repair at a time. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when I first knocked on Emma's door. The leaves were just starting to turn, that first hint of gold creeping into the maples along her street. She'd called the night before about a fence that was coming apart in her backyard. Come on. Storm damage, she'd said. A few boards loose, maybe a post that needed reinforcing. When she opened the door, I noticed her hands first. Paint under her fingernails, small cuts on her knuckles like she'd been working with something rough. She was maybe 28, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and wearing an old flannel shirt that had seen better days. "You must be Jake," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I'm Emma. Thanks for coming so early." "No problem. Mind if I take a look at what we're dealing with?" She led me through her house to the back door. The place felt lived in, but careful, like someone who took time to arrange things just so. Books stacked on the coffee table, a half-finished mug of coffee that's still steaming on the kitchen counter. Through the window, I could see the fence she was talking about. It was worse than she'd described. Three boards completely split, hanging at odd angles, the corner post leaning like it was tired of holding everything up. But it wasn't beyond saving. Nothing ever really is if you're willing to put in the work. "How long has it been like this?" I asked, stepping out onto her small deck. "Since that storm 2 weeks ago. I kept meaning to call someone, but—" She shrugged, following me down into the yard. I guess I was hoping it would just stay together on its own. I knelt beside the damaged section, running my hands along the wood. The post was solid at the base, just needed some bracing. The boards could be replaced easily enough. "This is definitely fixable. Probably take me most of the morning, but it'll be good as new." "What's it gonna cost me?" I did the math in my head, adding up materials and time. Then I looked at her again. Noticed the way she was chewing on her bottom lip, the way her eyes kept darting toward the house like she was calculating something herself. 200 including materials, I said. It was less than I usually charge, but something about the careful way she'd asked made me think she was watching every dollar. Her shoulders relaxed. "That works. When can you start?" "Right now, if you want. I've got everything I need in the truck." She smiled then, the first real smile I'd seen from her. "Perfect. I'll be inside if you need anything. I work from home, so just knock if you have questions." I spent the next hour pulling apart the damaged section, careful to save what I could. The wood was good quality, just beaten up by weather and time. While I worked, I found myself glancing toward the house more often than I should have. Through the kitchen window, I could see Emma at a small table, bent over what looked like drawings or plans, completely absorbed in whatever she was doing. The new boards went in clean and straight. I was lining up the final piece when I heard the back door open. "How's it looking?" Emma called, walking across the yard with 2 glasses of water. "Almost done, just need to secure this last board and touch up the stain." She handed me one of the glasses, and I realized how thirsty I'd gotten. The water was ice cold with a slice of lemon floating at the top. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "It's hot work. Besides, I needed a break myself." She gestured toward the house. "I've been staring at the same design for 3 hours, and it's starting to look like abstract art." "What kind of design?" "I'm a graphic designer. Freelance. Mostly small businesses around town. Right now, I'm trying to figure out a logo for a new bakery, and everything I come up with looks like it belongs on a cereal box." I laughed. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing. People like cereal." "True, but I don't think reminds you of breakfast is what they're going for." I finished the last screw and stepped back to admire the work. The fence looked solid again, like it had always been that way. Emma walked over to inspect it, running her hand along the new boards. "This is incredible," she assured. "It looks better than it did before." "That's the idea. Sometimes breaking gives you a chance to build back stronger." She looked at me then, something shifting in her expression. "That's a nice way to think about it." I was packing up my tools when she asked if I wanted more water. I should have said no. I had 3 more jobs lined up for the day, and I was already running behind schedule. But something about the way she asked, like she wasn't quite ready for me to leave, made me hesitate. "Sure," I said, "just for a minute." She disappeared into the house and came back with the fresh glasses. This time she sat down on the deck steps, patting the space beside her. I set my toolbox down and joined her. Can I ask you something? She said. Shoot. How did you get into this? The handyman thing. I mean, it wasn't a question I got often. Most people just wanted to know how much it would cost and when I could start. I used to work construction, big commercial projects, mostly office buildings and shopping centers. But I got tired of building things that all looked the same. This way every job is different. Every problem needs its own solution. And you like solving problems. I guess I do. There is something satisfying about taking something that's broken and making it work again. She nodded slowly, like she understood exactly what I meant. I feel the same way about design. When a client comes to me with this vague idea and I have to figure out how to turn it into something real, something that actually communicates what they're trying to say. Is that what you're working on now, the bakery logo? Among other things, it's been a busy month. She took a sip of water, looking out at the fence. I moved here 6 months ago from Portland. Thought small town life would be simpler, but turns out I just traded big city problems for small town ones. What kind of problems? She was quiet for a moment, like she was deciding how much to tell me. The usual stuff, finding clients, making ends meet, figuring out where I fit in a place where everyone's known each other since kindergarten. I understood that feeling. I'd grown up here, but there were still days when I felt like an outsider looking in. It takes time. People here are friendly enough, but they're cautious about new faces. Have you always lived here? Born and raised, left for college, came back after my dad had his heart attack. That was 8 years ago. Is he okay? He's fine now, stubborn as ever, but it made me realize that home isn't such a bad place to be. Emma smiled. That's sweet. Family's important. What about you? Any family back in Portland? Her expression changed, became more guarded. Not really, that's part of why I left. Sometimes you need a fresh start, you know. I did know. There were plenty of things in my own past that I'd rather leave behind. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen across her yard. The fence cast clean lines on the grass, solid and straight. I should probably get going, I said finally. I've got a kitchen sink that's been backing up for 3 days. Of course. She stood up, brushing off her jeans. What do I owe you? I pulled out my phone to write up a quick invoice, but she was already reaching for her wallet. She counted out $200 in cash, which surprised me. Most people wanted to write a check or use a card these days. Thank you, she said, handing me the money. Really, it means a lot to have it fixed. I was loading my tools into the truck when I felt a hand on my shoulder, light, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she should be touching me at all. Don't rush off just yet, Emma said softly. I turned around and she was standing closer than I'd expected, close enough that I could smell her shampoo, something floral and clean. There's something else, she continued. Another project if you're interested. What kind of project? She gestured toward the house. The front steps are starting to seek. I noticed it when I was coming home yesterday, and there's a window in the kitchen that sticks so bad I can barely open it. These weren't urgent repairs, the kind that couldn't wait. But the way she was looking at me, like she was hoping I'd say yes, made me think this wasn't really about the steps or the window. I could take a look, I said. When were you thinking? Would Thursday work? I pulled out my phone and checked my calendar. I had a bathroom renovation scheduled for Thursday morning, but it could wait. Thursday's good. Her face lit up. Great. Perfect. She paused like she wanted to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. I'll see you Thursday then. I drove away, thinking about the weight of her hand on my shoulder, the way she'd said, don't rush off just yet, like she meant more than just the conversation. There had been something in her voice, something that made me want to turn around and go back. Thursday morning came with the first real chill of fall. I arrived at Emma's house to find her waiting on the front porch with 2 cups of coffee. I thought you might need this, she said, handing me one of the cups. It's cold out here. The coffee was perfect, strong with just enough cream to take the edge off. Thanks. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to, besides I made too much anyway. The front steps were indeed sagging, but not as badly as she'd made it sound. A few loose screws, one board that needed replacing. 20 minutes of work, maybe 30 if I took my time. This isn't too bad, I said, kneeling to examine the damage. Looks like the original contractor used screws that were too short. They've worked loose over time. Is it dangerous? Not immediately, but it'll get worse if you leave it. I went to work, removing the old screws and replacing them with longer ones. Emma sat on the porch railing, watching me work and sipping her coffee. Can I ask you something personal? She said after a while. Sure. Are you married or seeing someone? The question caught me off guard. I looked up at her, trying to read her expression. No, neither. Why do you ask? Just curious. You seem like the kind of person who would be. What kind of person is that? Kind, reliable, the type who fixes things instead of throwing them away. I felt heat creep up my neck. I was married, divorced 3 years ago. I'm sorry, that must have been hard. It was, but sometimes things just don't work out, no matter how much you want them to. She nodded like she understood. I was engaged once, called it off 6 months before the wedding. What happened? I realized I was more in love with the idea of getting married than I was with him. He was a good guy, just not the right guy for me. I finished tightening the last screw and stood up, testing the step with my weight. Solid as a rock. That's done. What about this window? She led me inside to the kitchen, where a double-hung window overlooked the backyard. I tried lifting the bottom sash, and she was right. It barely budged. How long has it been like this? Since I moved in, the landlord said it was just painted shut. But I've tried everything. I examined the frame, running my fingers along the edges. Paint, yes, but also years of dirt and grime that had hardened into a seal. I can fix this, but it's going to take a while. A lot of scraping and sanding. How long? Couple hours, maybe more. You sure you want to deal with the noise? I don't mind. I'll just work upstairs. She showed me where she kept her cleaning supplies, then disappeared up to what I assumed was her office. I could hear her moving around overhead, the creak of floorboards, the occasional sound of her chair rolling across the floor. The window was worse than I'd thought, layer after layer of paint, some of it so old it had turned yellow with age. I worked slowly, carefully, trying not to damage the original wood. It was good craftsmanship, the kind they didn't do anymore. Someone had taken pride in building this house. I was deep into the work when Emma appeared with a sandwich and another cup of coffee. Lunch break, she announced, setting them on the counter. You don't have to keep feeding me. I know, but I figure if I'm going to have you here for hours, the least I can do is make sure you don't starve. The sandwich was turkey and Swiss on homemade bread with some kind of mustard that had a kick to it. Better than anything I would have grabbed from the deli down the street. This is really good, I said. My one domestic skill, well, that and coffee. What about the design work? That's not domestic, but it's definitely a skill. She laughed. True, though. Some days I wonder if I'm any good at it. What do you mean? It's hard to tell. Sometimes clients say they like what I do, but maybe they're just being polite. And working freelance, you don't have colleagues to bounce ideas off of. It gets lonely. I understood that feeling too. Working for yourself meant freedom, but it also meant isolation. Have you thought about joining some kind of professional group, networking events, that sort of thing? There's a graphic designers meetup in the city once a month. I keep meaning to go, but she shrugged. I guess I'm not great at putting myself out there. It's hard meeting new people, especially when you're trying to make a good impression professionally. Exactly. What if they think my work is terrible? What if I don't fit in? What if they think you're brilliant and you make some great connections? She smiled. You're an optimist. I'm a realist. I've seen your work. I gestured toward a small frame poster on her kitchen wall. It was for a local coffee shop. Elegant typography over a watercolor background. That's yours, isn't it? How did you know? Same style as the stuff I saw on your table the other day. It's good work, Emma. Really good. She blushed, looking down at her hands. Thank you. That means a lot. I went back to the window, and she settled at her kitchen table with her laptop. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the scraping of my putty knife and the soft clicking of her keyboard. Every now and then, I'd catch her watching me, but she'd look away quickly when our eyes met. By mid-afternoon, I had the window moving freely. The sash glided up and down like it was brand new, letting in the crisp fall air. Try it now, I said. Emma came over and lifted the window with one finger. Her face broke into a huge grin. That's amazing. I can't believe how easy it moves now. Sometimes the simplest problems have the most satisfying solutions. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Can I ask you another personal question? Seems to be the theme today. Why do you do this? Really, I mean, you could probably make more money doing construction again or working for some big company. Why choose the harder path? It was a good question, One I'd asked myself plenty of times when I was struggling to pay bills or dealing with difficult customers. I guess because this feels more real to me. When I was doing construction, I was just one guy on a crew of 50, building something that would be torn down in 20 years anyway. This way, I'm actually helping people, solving their problems, making their lives a little easier. And that matters to you. It does. Maybe that sounds naive, but I like the idea that what I do makes a difference, even if it's a small one. She nodded slowly. It doesn't sound naive at all. I think that's what I'm trying to do with my design work too. Help people tell their stories, communicate what they care about. Exactly. We're both in the business of fixing things, just different kinds of things. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. I packed up my tools, trying not to think about how much I'd enjoyed the afternoon, working in her kitchen, sharing lunch, talking about things that actually mattered. It had been a long time since I'd felt that comfortable with someone. What do I owe you for today? Emma asked. 150. The window took longer than I expected. She counted out the money, then hesitated before handing it to me. Jake, can I ask you something else? Sure. Would you maybe want to have dinner sometime? Not as a client thing, just as friends. The question hung in the air between us. I could see the nervousness in her eyes, the way she was holding her breath, waiting for my answer. I'd like that, I said. I'd like that a lot. Her smile was radiant. Really? Really? When were you thinking? Saturday? I know this little Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy, but the food is incredible. Saturday works. What time? 7. Perfect, I'll pick you up. I was almost to my truck when she called after me. Jake! I turned around. She was standing in her doorway, backlit by the warm light from inside her house. Thank you for the fence and the steps and the window, but also for this, for being so easy to talk to. Thank you for the coffee and the sandwich and for asking me to dinner. She laughed. I was so nervous about that. You didn't need to be nervous. Good to know for next time. Next time. The phrase stuck with me as I drove home. There was going to be a next time. Saturday evening, I found myself standing in front of my closet longer than I had in months, trying to decide what to wear. Not too formal, but not too casual either. I settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt, the kind of outfit that could work for almost anything. I arrived at Emma's house 5 minutes early and sat in my truck for a moment, trying to calm my nerves. It had been a long time since I'd been on a real date, and I wasn't sure I remembered how to do it. Emma opened the door before I could knock. She was wearing a simple black dress and boots, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked beautiful. Hi, she said a little breathlessly. Hi, you look great. Thanks, so do you. Ready to go? The restaurant was small and dimly lit, with maybe a dozen tables, in the kind of atmosphere that encouraged quiet conversation. We were seated by the window where we could watch people walking by on the sidewalk outside. I love this place, Emma said, looking around. It reminds me of this little spot I used to go to in Portland. And do you miss it? Portland, I mean. Sometimes mostly the food scene and the art galleries, but I don't miss the traffic or the cost of living or the way everyone seemed to be in such a hurry all the time. Our server brought menus and took our drink orders. Emma got a glass of red wine, I stuck with water. I'd learned the hard way that alcohol and first dates didn't always mix well for me. So tell me about your business, Emma said after we'd ordered. How did you get started? Trial and error, mostly. When I first moved back from college, I was just helping neighbors with small jobs. Word spread, and before I knew it, I had more work than I could handle. That's the best kind of advertising, people trusting you enough to recommend you to their friends. It is, but it also means I can't afford to mess up. In a town this size, one bad job can ruin your reputation pretty quickly. Is that stressful? Sometimes, but it also keeps me honest. I can't cut corners or do sloppy work because everyone will know about it. Our food arrived. Pasta for her, chicken parmesan for me. Everything was as good as she'd promised. What about you, I asked. How did you end up in graphic design? Art school originally. I thought I wanted to be a painter, but I was terrible at it. Too impatient, I guess. I liked the idea of creating something beautiful, but I also wanted it to serve a purpose. Design was the perfect compromise. Do you still paint sometimes? Mostly just for myself now. It's relaxing. I'd like to see your work sometime. She blushed. Maybe if you promise not to judge too harshly. I promise. We talked through dinner about everything and nothing. Her favorite books, my worst handyman disasters, places we'd like to travel, movies that made us cry. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like we'd known each other for years instead of days. After dinner, we walked slowly back toward my truck. neither of us seeming eager for the evening to end. Thank you, Emma said as we reached her house. I had a really good time. So did I. We should do it again. I'd like that. We stood on her front porch, the same steps I'd fixed just a few days earlier. The porch light cast a warm glow over everything, making the moment feel suspended in time. Jake, she said softly. Yeah? I'm really glad you answered my call about the fence. Me too. She stepped closer, and for a moment I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she reached out and touched my arm, the same gentle gesture she'd made that first day. Good night, she said. Good night, Emma. I waited until she was safely inside before driving home, my mind replaying every moment of the evening. The way she'd laughed at my stories, the way she'd listened when I talked about my work, the way she'd looked at me across the dinner table like I was someone worth knowing. It had been a long time since I'd felt this way about anyone. Hopeful, excited about the possibility of something real. Over the next few weeks, Emma found more reasons to call me. A squeaky hinge here, a loose tile there. Projects that probably didn't really need a professional, but I didn't mind. Each visit was an excuse to spend time together, to learn more about each other. She showed me her art one afternoon, watercolor landscapes that captured the quiet beauty of small-town life, and they were better than she'd given herself credit for, full of subtle detail and genuine emotion. These are incredible, I said, studying a painting of the town square in autumn. You should show them somewhere. They're just hobby pieces. Emma, these aren't hobby pieces. This is real art. She looked uncomfortable with the praise, but I could see that it meant something to her. Maybe someday. Why not now? There's that gallery downtown, the one next to the coffee shop. I bet they'd be interested. I couldn't. What if they said no? What if they said yes? It became our running conversation. I'd encourage her to take risks, put herself out there, and she'd find reasons why it wasn't the right time. But I could see her starting to consider it, the idea taking root. One evening in late October, she called with what she claimed was an emergency. A cabinet door that had come off its hinges and was hanging at a dangerous angle. When I arrived, I found her in the kitchen looking frazzled, pointing at a perfectly fine cabinet door that was hanging slightly crooked. That's your emergency? I asked, trying not to smile. It could fall and hit someone in the head. Emma, it would take a hurricane to knock that door loose. She bit her tip, looking embarrassed. Okay, fine. It's not really an emergency. I just wanted to see you. The honesty of it caught me off guard. You could have just called and asked me to come over. I wasn't sure if that was okay. We'd been on a few dates, but I didn't know if showing up without a work excuse was crossing some kind of line. I sat down my toolbox and looked at her seriously. Emma, you don't need an excuse to want to spend time with me. I like being here. I like being with you. Really? Really. But since I'm here, I might as well fix your cabinet door. It took all of 5 minutes to adjust the hinges and get the door hanging straight. When I finished, Emma was standing behind me with 2 glasses of wine. Since this wasn't really a work call, I thought maybe we could just hang out. I'd like that. We settled on her couch, the same spot where I'd first noticed her books and her careful way of arranging things. Up close, I could see more details. Photos of places she'd traveled, a small collection of vintage postcards, a bookshelf organized by color rather than author. Tell me about these, I said, gesturing toward the postcards. I collect them from antique shops. I like thinking about the people who sent them, what their lives were like. She pulled out one from the collection, a faded image of a beach somewhere warm. This one's from 1952. It says, "Having a wonderful time. Wish you were here. Love always, Margaret." I wonder who Margaret was writing to, whether they ever made it to the beach together. That's a romantic way to look at it. I guess I'm a romantic at heart, even when I probably shouldn't be. Why shouldn't you be? She was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in her glass. Because it usually leads to disappointment. People aren't fairy tales, you know. They're complicated and messy, and they let you down. Is that what happened with your fiancé? Partly. I built up this whole fantasy about what our life would be like together. And when reality didn't match up, I didn't know how to handle it. What was the reality? That we wanted completely different things. He wanted the house in the suburbs, and the 2.5 kids, and the white picket fence. I wanted to travel, to build my career, to figure out who I was before I became half of a couple. Those aren't necessarily incompatible things. No, but they require compromise, and neither of us was very good at that. I understood. My own marriage had ended for similar reasons. Two people who'd grown in different directions without realizing it until it was too late. What about now? I asked. What do you want now? She looked at me, something shifting in her expression. I'm still figuring that out, but I know I want to be with someone who sees me for who I actually am, not who they want me to be. And who are you, Emma? She smiled, but there was a sadness in it. I'm someone who fixes fences that don't really need fixing because she wants an excuse to spend time with the handyman. I laughed, setting down my wine glass. For the record, I knew that cabinet door wasn't really broken. You did? Emma, I've been doing this for 8 years. I know the difference between a real emergency and a woman who wants company. Are you mad? Are you kidding? It's the best fake emergency I've ever responded to. She moved closer on the couch, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her body next to mine. Jake? Yeah, I think I'm falling for you. The words hung in the air between us, honest and vulnerable and terrifying. I reached out and touched her face, running my thumb along her cheek. I think I'm falling for you, too. She leaned into my touch, closing her eyes. This is scary. I know. I don't want to mess this up. You won't. We won't. She opened her eyes and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Trust, maybe, or hope. Stay tonight. It wasn't really a question, and I wasn't going to pretend I didn't want to. Are you sure? I'm sure. I stayed, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, everything felt exactly right. Not perfect. Nothing ever is, but right in a way that made me understand why people write songs about falling in love. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of Emma humming in the kitchen. She was standing at the stove making pancakes, wearing my shirt from the night before and nothing else. Good morning, she said when she saw me, her face lighting up with a smile that made my chest tight. Good morning. You didn't have to make breakfast. I wanted to. Besides, I figured you'd worked up an appetite. I wrapped my arms around her from behind, breathing in the scent of her hair. I could get used to this. The pancakes, all of it. She leaned back against me, and I could feel some of the tension leave her body. Me too. We ate breakfast on her back porch, looking out at the fence I'd repaired what felt like a lifetime ago. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of fall day that makes you grateful to be alive. I have a confession, Emma said, cutting into her pancakes. Another one? The fence wasn't really storm damage. I looked at her confused. What do you mean? I mean, there was no storm. Well, there was, but it didn't damage the fence. I broke those boards myself. You what? She looked embarrassed, but determined to tell the truth. I'd been watching you work on the Hendersons' place across the street for 3 days. You seemed so focused, so careful with everything you did. And when Mrs. Henderson brought you lemonade, you were so polite and grateful. I thought maybe if I had a reason to call you, I could meet you. I stared at her, processing this information. You vandalized your own fence to get my attention? When you put it like that, it sounds crazy. It is crazy. It's also kind of brilliant. You're not mad? Mad? Emma, it's the most flattering thing anyone's ever done for me. She grinned, relief flooding her face. Really? Really. Though next time you want to get my attention, you could just say hello. I'll keep that in mind. We spent the morning together talking about everything and nothing. She showed me more of her art, and I told her about the house I was slowly renovating on the other side of town. We made plans for the evening and the next day and the weekend. It felt natural, easy, like we'd been doing this for years instead of hours. But the best part was the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, like I was something precious, something worth keeping. I hadn't felt that way in a long time, and I'd forgotten how good it could be. Around noon, I reluctantly got dressed and prepared to leave. I had work to do, bills to pay, a business to run. But for the first time in years, I found myself wishing I could just stay in bed with someone I cared about. I'll call you later, I said, kissing her goodbye at the door. You better. I was halfway to my truck when she called after me. Jake! I turned around. She was standing in the doorway wearing my shirt and looking beautiful and uncertain. Thank you, she said. For what? For fixing my fence and for staying. Thank you for breaking it in the first place. She laughed, and the sound followed me all the way home. That evening, she called while I was eating a sad dinner of leftover pizza and watching the news. What are you doing? She asked. Living the bachelor dream, cold pizza and cable news. You? Trying to work on that bakery logo, but I keep getting distracted. By what? Thinking about this morning, about you. I muted the television, giving her my full attention. Good thoughts, I hope. Very good thoughts, Jake. I submitted my paintings to that gallery you mentioned. I sat up straighter. You did? When? This afternoon, I dropped off 5 pieces in a portfolio. They said they'd get back to me within a week. Emma, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I'm terrified. That's normal. Putting yourself out there is scary, but it's the only way good things happen. Is that your philosophy on everything? Pretty much. It served me well so far. Well, it got you me, so it can't be all bad. Best decision I ever made answering that call about your fence. Even if the fence wasn't really broken, especially because the fence wasn't really broken. It means you chose me, Emma. Out of all the handymen in town, you chose me. There aren't that many handymen in town. Still counts. She laughed, and I could picture her smiling on the other end of the line. I should let you get back to your glamorous evening. Or you could come over here and save me from myself. Is that an invitation? It's whatever you want it to be. 20 minutes later, she was knocking on my door with a bottle of wine and a bag of Chinese takeout. I figured you could use a real dinner, she said, holding up the bag. You figured right. My house was nothing special, a small 2-bedroom place I'd bought after the divorce, more functional than beautiful. But Emma looked around like she was seeing something wonderful. This is nice, she said, taking in the simple furniture and clean lines. Very you. Very me, boring. Very you, meaning honest, no pretense, just what you need and nothing extra. We ate dinner at my kitchen table, talking about her day and mine, the comfortable conversation of people who were beginning to know each other well. She told me about a difficult client who couldn't make up their mind about colors, and I told her about a bathroom renovation that had revealed some creative plumbing solutions from the previous owner. Do you ever get tired of it? She asked. Dealing with other people's problems all the time. Sometimes, but then I remember that everyone has problems. At least I get paid to solve mine. That's a healthy way to look at it. After dinner, we moved to the couch to watch a movie, but we spent more time talking than watching. She curled up against my side, her head on my shoulder, and I found myself thinking about how right this felt. How easy. Jake, she said during a particularly boring stretch of dialogue. What happens now? What do you mean? With us? Where do we go from here? It was a fair question, one I'd been thinking about myself. I don't know. Where do you want to go? Forward, wherever that leads. That works for me. Even if it gets complicated? Especially if it gets complicated, the best things usually are. She lifted her head to look at me. You really believe that? I do. Simple is easy, but it's not usually very interesting. Complicated means there's something worth working for. And you think we're worth working for? I know we are. She kissed me then, soft and slow and full of promise. When we broke apart, she was smiling. Good answer. The next few weeks passed in a blur of shared dinners and lazy mornings, of getting to know each other's routines and quirks. Emma was a night owl who did her best work after 10 p.m. I was an early riser who liked to get the hardest jobs done before noon. She organized her life by color and feeling. I organized mine by logic and efficiency. On paper, we shouldn't have worked, but in reality, we balanced each other perfectly. She heard back from the gallery on a Thursday afternoon. I was installing a new ceiling fan when my phone rang. They said yes, she said without preamble, her voice breathless with excitement. They what? The gallery. They want to show 3 of my paintings in their winter exhibition. It opens in December. I nearly dropped my drill. Emma, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I can't believe it. They actually said yes. Of course they said yes. Your work is beautiful. I have to call my mom and figure out how to frame them properly and write an artist statement. Oh God, I have to write an artist statement. I could hear her pacing on the other end of the line, excitement and panic warring in her voice. Breathe, I said. You've got time to figure all that out. Will you come to the opening? I know it's probably not your thing, but try and stop me. Really, Emma, I wouldn't miss it for anything. Thank you for everything, for pushing me to submit them in the first place. You did the hard part. I just reminded you that you were brave enough to try. The opening was on a Friday night in early December. Emma had been nervous for weeks, second-guessing every decision from the frames to the price points. But when I saw her paintings hanging on the gallery wall, professionally lit and beautifully displayed, I knew she had nothing to worry about. Her landscapes looked even better in the gallery setting, the subtle colors and careful compositions drawing people in for closer looks. I watched strangers study her work, pointing out details and discussing techniques, and felt a surge of pride that surprised me with its intensity. They like them, Emma whispered. appearing at my elbow with a glass of wine. Of course they like them. They're beautiful. Mrs. Patterson from the library just asked if I do commissions. What did you tell her? That I'd think about it. I've never done commissions before. Maybe it's time to start. She looked around the gallery, taking in the crowd of people who had come to see her work. I can't believe this is really happening. Believe it, you earned this. We stayed until closing, talking to visitors and other artists, celebrating Emma's success. On the drive home, she was quiet, processing everything that had happened. Thank you, she said as we pulled into her driveway. For what this time? For believing in me before I believed in myself. That's what people do for each other, Emma, when they care. She looked at me in the dim light from the dashboard. Is that what we're doing? Caring about each other? I think we're doing more than that. What are we doing? I turned off the engine and faced her fully. I think we're falling in love. I think we have been for a while now. She was quiet for a long moment, and I wondered if I'd said too much too soon. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that starts small and spreads until it transforms everything. I think you're right, she said. I think I love you, Jake. I love you too, Emma. It was the first time either of us had said the words out loud, and they hung in the air between us, honest and true, and a little terrifying. What happens now, she asked. Now we figure out what comes next. Together? Together sounds good. 6 months later, I was back in Emma's yard working on another fence. This one wasn't broken. She was expanding her garden and needed a border to keep the rabbits out. But as I worked, I found myself thinking about that first day when she called about storm damage that never happened. How's it looking? Emma called from the back door, carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. Almost done, just need to attach this last section. She settled on the deck steps, the same spot where we'd sat that first day when I told her that sometimes breaking gives you a chance to build back stronger. I'd been talking about the fence then, but I realize now that I could have been talking about us. We'd both been broken when we met, in different ways. She was struggling to find her place in a new town, to build a career and figure out who she was on her own. I was stuck in routines that felt safe but empty, going through the motions of a life without really living it. But somehow, together, we'd managed to build something stronger than either of us had been alone. Jake, Emma said, interrupting my thoughts. Yeah? I got another call from the gallery today. They want to do a solo show of my work in the spring. I looked up from the fence post I was securing. Emma, that's incredible. I know, I can't quite believe it yet. You should believe it. You've worked hard for this. She was quiet for a moment, watching me work. I've been thinking about what you said that first day, about breaking, giving you a chance to build back stronger. What about it? I think that's what happened to us. We were both a little broken when we met, and somehow we helped each other build something better. I finished the last screw and stood up, brushing the dirt off my hands. I think you're right. Do you ever regret it, answering that call about my fake fence repair? I walked over to where she was sitting and settled beside her on the steps. Never, not for a single second. Even when I'm being neurotic about gallery openings? Especially then. She laughed, leaning against my shoulder. I love you. You know that. I love you too. We sat in comfortable silence, looking out at the new fence that would protect her growing garden. In the distance, I could hear the sounds of the neighborhood settling into evening. Kids playing in nearby yards. Someone starting a barbecue grill. The soft hum of air conditioners kicking on. It was ordinary and perfect and exactly where I wanted to be. Jake, Emma said softly. Yeah? Don't rush off just yet. I smiled, remembering the first time she'd said those words to me, the way her hand had felt on my shoulder, the way something had shifted between us in that moment. I'm not going anywhere, I said, and I meant it. Whatever came next, gallery shows or difficult clients, new projects or unexpected challenges, we'd face it together. We'd built something worth keeping, something strong enough to weather whatever storms might come. Sometimes the best things in life start with something broken. A fence that needs fixing, a heart that needs healing, a person who needs someone to believe in them. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, fixing one broken thing leads to finding everything you never knew you were looking for. I looked at Emma sitting beside me in the golden light of late afternoon and knew that I was exactly where I belonged. Home wasn't a place, I realized. It was a person. It was this woman who had broken her own fence just to meet me, who had trusted me with her art and her fears and her heart. Thank you, I said. For what? For that first phone call, for giving me a reason to knock on your door. Thank you for answering it. Always, Emma, I said. I'll always answer when you call. And as the sun set over Cedar Falls, painting the sky in shades of golden pink, I knew that was a promise I intended to keep for the rest of my life. In the heartwarming tale of Jake and Emma, we uncover a profound life lesson. Sometimes the most beautiful connections in life arise from intentional acts of vulnerability, even if they start with a little breakage. Emma, feeling isolated in her new small-town life, didn't wait for fate to intervene. She took a bold step, literally breaking her fence, to create an opportunity to meet Jake, the kind-hearted handyman across the street. What began as a fabricated repair job blossomed into a genuine romance, filled with shared coffees, honest conversations, and mutual encouragement. Jake, too, found solace in Emma's presence, reminding us that healing often comes when we least expect it, from someone who sees our worth beyond our routines. This story tugs at the soul because it mirrors our own journeys. How many of us have hesitated to reach out, fearing rejection or looking foolish? Yet, Emma's courage teaches us that true growth happens when we dare to disrupt the ordinary. Whether it's mending a metaphorical fence in our relationships, pursuing a passion like her art, or simply saying hello to a stranger who might change everything. Life's storms may leave us feeling broken, but as Jake wisely notes, breaking gives us a chance to build back stronger. It's a reminder to embrace imperfections, to seek connections that nurture our spirits, and to believe that love and opportunity often hide in the everyday chaos. In a world rushing by, this narrative urges us to slow down, take risks, and trust that vulnerability can lead to profound joy and fulfillment. What about you? Have you ever taken a leap of faith that led to something unexpected and wonderful? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear how this resonates with you. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more inspiring tales that remind us of life's hidden magic. Your support keeps these stories alive. Let's build a community of dreamers together.